we need to go back a long, long way into history to work this one out. When the Romans invaded, and we were all told about the ancient Britons standing there dressed in blue, covered in blue wold, fighting them off, but they didn't succeed. The Romans invaded, they took the country, they invaded twice, and at the last time they stayed for, I think, probably about 400 years. Later on, the Angles came, and then the Saxons. And the Saxons were brought into the country, in fact, to defend the population of the country who had grown soft under Roman rule. So they brought in a regiment of mercenaries. They brought in the Saxons from Saxony in Germany. But having done what they were here to do, which was to protect the indigenous population, the indigenous population decided they weren't going to pay them. So the Saxons then went to war against the indigenous population and took over the country. Now the Danes started to invade, and the country was regularly raided by Viking troops, and the Saxons ended up largely in the south of England. But the Danes gradually worked their way down until we come to a prince by the name of Alfred. Alfred took on the Danes and was beaten. But Alfred came back, and by dint of his military capability, he was able to beat the Danes back as far as Watling Street, which runs right the way through Buckinghamshire. The south of Watling Street was Saxon, and the north of it was held by the Danes. Now Alfred was elected the king of all of the English south of Watling Street. And what he did, he went to all of the old kingdoms like Wessex and Mercia and the others, and he looked at all of their laws and their customs. And he wrote all of their laws and their customs in a book that he thought were good laws and customs. And he took the book and he showed it to the Witan, which was Alfred's parliament. And he asked them to look at it and see if they agreed that the laws and customs in it were good. And they agreed for the most part that it was. So with slight amendments, Alfred published his book as the King's Law. The book was called The Dome, and it became the only law in Alfred's England, and in fact was good, and it was fair law. And it was basically the first ever book of constitutional law in this country. It wasn't until Alfred's grandson became the king of the entire country of England that the Dome actually spread north of Watling Street as well. But having done that, it remained. Edward the Confessor altered it slightly, but basically operated on Dome law. When William the Conqueror invaded, one of the first things that he did was said that he wasn't going to change the law, he would use Edward's laws. So the Dome law carried across into the reign of William the Conqueror. And it carried on until 1471, the reign of Edward IV. But between then, William the Conqueror invading and Edward IV, we had Henry I. Henry I, he came along and he was unhappy about what some of the other kings had been doing, and he issued what he called a Charter of Liberties, which is where he undertook to rule the country in a particular way. And the particular way that he was going to rule the country was in fact that we would maintain all of the rights and freedoms that we had under Alfred's law, and he would hold to that. King John was not a very nice man. He was a good soldier, but he wasn't a very nice man. He used mercenaries in order to oppress the population, and after a while both the barons and the general people in the country got so fed up with this that they forced King John to meet with them at Runnymede. At Runnymede, King John was forced to sign a document which was produced by Archbishop Langton, which had been based very closely on the Charter of Henry I. Now, what this did was it gave again the basic rights and freedoms of the people of this country. And one of the things that it said was, to nobody will we sell, to nobody will we deny, and to nobody will we delay justice. Now we'll come back to that in a little while. But basically, this particular document, the 1215 Magna Carta, was made by what they call the Estates of England. That is, the barons who comprised the lords of the country, they were there, but thousands upon thousands of the common man in the country was also there. And because we had the king there, that comprises the three estates of the country: the common man, the lords, and the sovereign. Because of that, the later statutes of the Magna Carta, 1225, 1275 and 1297, the 1297 one being passed by Parliament, do not have the same authority as the original 1215 Magna Carta, because they were not made by all of the estates of the country. Various kings reissued it until Parliament in 1297 actually passed it as statute law. But statute law has a drawback insofar as it cannot bind Parliament, so Parliament can revoke statute law should it so desire.